So I've called this never a dull moment because I think from my experience examining, I wanted to focus on the fact that we have a lot of the same stuff appearing in every single exam, and there is so much more out there. I think a lot of people don't quite know how the various syllabi can be exploited and used in a way that is much more imaginative and made to your students. So I just wanted to talk about that. ANZCA gives you a lot of choice, and I think a lot of people don't quite realise how much you can exploit the syllabus for your own students, for your own means. I work in a school. Give you a little bit of background about me. I don't really have much of a private teaching practice now, mainly because I had 4 children under 6 and I didn't have time to run my own private practice at home. So I ended up more or less closing that down. I always have 1 or 2 people doing diplomas with me, but for the most part, I'm a school teacher. So I don't always get to audition all my students. I do get some of the really good students, and I also get special needs students. That's kind of where I'm sitting. So I've got kids of all abilities, literally all abilities. And I try and find something in the ANZCA syllabus that will be great for them. Now, we've got ANZCA comprehensive exams, which is obviously including scales, oral tests, sight reading, general knowledge, all of that stuff. Click. We've got the performance exam, which, as most of you know, is just 4 pieces, nothing else. Now, I'll just say here, and I'm going to state this for the record, that is not a soft option exam, because it actually requires you to perform your pieces. We have a higher expectation on students to actually perform their choices and be very secure. Click. Video performance exam, it's the same as the face-to-face performance exam, except it must be recorded in one long take. Click. And last of all, we have our latest exam offering, ANZCA Go, which is 4 pieces uploaded whenever you like over the space of a year. It does have the same requirements for repertoire as the performance exam, but the difference is the requirement in uploading them. Now, we do expect children to perform at or students to perform at a certain standard, but it's not perhaps as onerous on the children because they don't have to have everything ready on the one day. And I'm going to talk a bit later on about how that can work for you. Click. Click. Sorry. Now, you can, with your students, you can choose your strengths or challenge your horizons, and it completely depends on the students. You might have some students who are really good at the improvising and the jazz, and that's their strength. So you're going to do a modern syllabus with them. If you want to challenge your horizons with them, do some classical. Click. We have the classical syllabus, of course. We have click. We have the modern syllabus. This is for piano. I think we have that for singing and a couple of other instruments, but this is certainly true for piano. Click. Click. And click again. We're going to get out of that page and just keep clicking until I tell you to stop. Thanks, Joe. Now, free choice. In both the comprehensive and the performance exams, you have one list that can be free choice, and that is your chance to be cool. Click. There you go. There's a very cool Mozart there. Click. We'll get out of that screen. Oh, hang on, before we do that. Now, you can combine choices from the classical and modern syllabi by using the free choice options, and that's available from grade 1 to grade 8. Keep clicking. Now, I've given 2 programs, classical versus modern, so you can just keep clicking through that, Joe, until we get everything up there. Now, the first program I've given is a grade 1, and we've got 2 very classical pieces. And then the third piece is Cool Daddy, which is obviously from the modern syllabus, Pop and Rock. Now, some students are going to be really challenged by, for example, doing swing rhythms. if they're very classical, and if you've taught them that a dotted rhythm, for example, is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, very squared off rhythm, all of a sudden in swing, a dotted rhythm becomes 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. And they have to actually go through a bit of a process to learn that. So, you know, doing a jazz or swing piece is going to completely open their horizons. So we're using their strengths in their classical syllabus, but we're also challenging their horizons there. Can we just have a look at that second program, please, Joe? This is, again, a grade 1 program. So we've got 2 very modern pieces. We've got Scooby-Doo-Wop. We all know that one. That appears in so many books and syllabi. It's a great piece by wonderful Karen Bailey. And Don't Want to Leave You Blues, which is quite a challenging piece. It's got a few little coordination problems for a grade 1er. And then classical List C, Vivid Venus. I don't know how many of you know this piece. It's from a setting of, or a book with pieces all to do with the planets. It's called Musical Planets by Carolyn Miller. It's an absolute banger of a book. And if you haven't come across it, have a look at it. It's got some wonderful pieces that the kids absolutely adore because they're very descriptive, and they have their challenges, but they're quite easy to learn in the sense that she uses a lot of patterns. Great little pieces. But Vivid Venus is all on black notes. It has introduces portato touch, which they have to get used to moving around the piano. They have a little kind of Alberti bass in the left hand, all on black notes, which is great for development of piano technique. Lots of things going on in that, and it's a very pretty piece. It will usually become their favourite piece in the program. All right, moving on to the next screen. I can't remember what, okay, here we go. This is a great grade 8 sample program. So if we could just keep clicking through, please, Joe. All right, so, oh no, it's not grade 8, it's grade 6. So this is another classical program. We've got The Storm by Bergmüller. Everyone knows that one. A classical List B. I've tried to choose a lot of pieces off the list rather than the books because we all get very sick of the books. We do them quite a lot. There's good stuff in there, but there's some great music on the lists. The Galuppi Adagio is just a gorgeous piece. It's in one of the essential keyboard repertoire books. And if you haven't come across it, have a good look at it. Gorgeous piece by a very underrated composer. Nocturne by Grieg, which is, again, that's a very popular piece. Kids love it because they've probably heard it before. And then another one, Bites the Dust. That's from the Classical Queen book by Kevin. It's a great piece and is quite a tongue-in-cheek arrangement. Great one for classical pianists to do. They absolutely love doing it. Let's move on to the next screen, please, Joe. Oh, the next, yeah. Okay, so this is a modern program. We've got a Motown song, How Sweet It Is, River City Blues, Putting on the Ritz, which is a great arrangement. I can't remember the name of the books. I think it's The Magic of Standards. All arrangements by Siskind. And this one is really clever. It's fun, it's clever. It's very fast and impressive, but very accessible for grade 6s. And then I've put Sonny Trois Angel, which is a lovely, lovely piece. Now that is, you can argue whether it's strictly speaking classical. It is on the classical list, but it's often a good one to start off our very jazzy modern kids on because it's, again, very accessible, very moody, and they can really work on interpretation with that, which is something that your jazz kids often find, that very expressive side of themselves. You need to work on that. All right, moving on to the next screen. Okay, so comprehensive classical. Can we just keep clicking through, please? Now, again, I've given a couple of sample programs. I've gone with King William's March, which is in a couple of sources off the list. Sonatina in C, that's in about 30,000 books. and Cool Daddy again. And let's have a look at the second sample program. This one is, again, all off the classical list, but there's quite a bit of variation in there. Dripping Fairy, that's a very funny little one by Chihuahua, great for staccato touch. Village Dance of Cherney, it's Cherney. It does what it says on the tin. And Velvet Winter by Naiko Ikeda. It's gorgeous. It's very moody. Once again, it's challenging that musicality that we want to start instilling in kids right from the very start. Don't wait till grade 4. They won't be able to do it if you wait that long, or they'll find it a lot harder. Start making them express and experiment with phrase shaping, rubato, pedal, all of those things as soon as they start playing the piano. All right, moving on to the next screen. Thank you, Joe. So we've got a later grade here. I think I did grade 8. Yes, I did. So this is another example of using that free choice list D. So we've started off with that beautiful Albumblatt of Grützmacher, which is just a gorgeous study. I'm not a big fan, I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of studies that are just tearing up and down the keyboard with lots of scales and arpeggios. Sorry, Cherney. I find that pieces which also challenge musicianship, for my money, are better. And yes, you spend more time on them, but the kids actually enjoy playing them in the end. So we sometimes do a Cherney just for fun, but this is a beautiful piece that again challenges pedaling, expression, phrase shaping, pulling important notes out of the texture, all of those things. Fantasia in C minor, that's the challenge piece there in that program. Intermezzo in A major of Brahms, another pretty difficult piece. And Defying Gravity. It's very hard to find a teenage girl these days that doesn't absolutely adore Wicked. So this is one for them. If we could just go to the next program. This is another grade 8 program. In this one, I've chosen Zeitgeist 25, which is quite an abrasive piece, quite out there, but good for pushing the boat out on kids who just like to play pretty tonal music. The first movement of the Sonata in A minor of Schubert. Liszt Consolation, no surprises there. That is a very common one for people to choose at grade 8, and it's a great piece. And The Cat and the Mouse. So that's a much more standard program, apart from the Zeitgeist, which, you know, is pushing the boat out a little bit. Can we move on, please, Joe, to the next screen? So now we're coming up with our modern program. So the comprehensive modern. And this is a program, of course, when I'm talking comprehensive, I'm talking the exams that include all the other stuff, the sight reading, general knowledge, all of that stuff. Here I've gone with a classical list A, and I sometimes do this when I'm first starting out with a child, because I sometimes don't know if they're going to end up doing comprehensive or performance. So it's sometimes smart to make your classical piece your list A, because then you have the option later on, okay, we can learn another piece and we can do a performance exam. So that one's our classical piece. Robotico, that's a Daniel McFarlane piece from the pop and rock category, and Farewell Blues is, I think that's Martha Mayer, and that's again from the blues category. So we've got our necessary 2 categories in there. And if you look at the syllabus, you have to choose a piece from at least 2 categories. So you could have, for example, you could have 2 pop and rock and 1 blues, or you could have 2 blues and 1 pop and rock, or whatever combination you like, really, from any of the categories. But if you use one of them to do that classical list A, then you have options down the line. Can we have a look at the second program, please, Joe? So this one is a comprehensive modern, and I've chosen completely off the modern list. So we've got the Baby Elephant Walk, Do Re Mi, My Birthday Barbie, which is from the that's from the extra little book. I can't remember what it's called. I think it's I'm not in my correct room. If I was in my room, I'd reach up on my shelf and grab it down. but it's like the supplementary books for preparatory to grade 1, I think. Now that program, if you wanted down the track to go performance, all you need to do is add a classical list A or a piece of the prescribed list. So we'll talk a bit more about that later. Moving on, please, Joe.
Yes, I just wanted to say, May, that first grade 1 program is a legal program for grade 1 because the King William March can be the free choice of grade 1.
That's right. Yes. Yes, I should point out that what I'm showing you here are all legal programs. Just while we're talking about it, the problem with not putting in a legal program is it leaves the examiner with the awful dilemma of having to give one of the pieces half marks. Believe me, we hate doing that. But honestly, it's up to us as teachers to read the syllabus and be all over it and to ask questions. If we're not sure, we need to ask questions. So your free choice, that's a very good point by Tony. Your free choice doesn't need to be a list C or a list D. It can be a list A, it can be a list B, it can be a list C, it can be a list D. So you do have that option of taking your free choice from anywhere out of the classical syllabus. I'm just suggesting that if you want to be smart about it, if you start off with a free choice in a program, you might want to think about doing that list A, because then that gives you the option to do a performance program down the track. If you decide before you enter your students, you think, oh, actually, this kid's going to be much better doing a video performance exam, or we're just going to go performance, or we might do go. It gives you those options. All right, we'll move on to the next screen. Please, Joe, just keep clicking through. The next one is, again, comprehensive modern, but we're looking at a higher grade here. Once again, these are all from the modern syllabus. So, of course, if you did this program, it's a great program. There's lots of variety in that. You've got Dr. Funk, which is just, full of energy. Beauty and the Beast, which is a very popular choice, again, for your 14, 15-year-olds. They love doing that. The Jig is Up, which is quite a fun piece by Sunny again. And Chilito Lindo, which is a great arrangement of a very old song by Christopher Norton. If you haven't explored the Eastern Preludes and, what's the other one? He's got 2 books, the Eastern Preludes, and I can't quite think of the other name. Perhaps you can help me out there, Tony. They're great arrangements of folk songs from Pacific Preludes, Eastern Preludes and Pacific Preludes. I got it. They're folk songs from all around those regions that don't get much airtime, and he's made these wonderful jazzy arrangements. The kids love them, and they're a lot of fun to play. Okay, moving on to the next program. Now, this is, again, a very straightforward modern program. The Wind Beneath My Wings, Mephisto Blues, You Can Always Count on Me, and from the classical list, Consolation. Once again, we've got a lot of different sort of requirements in terms of technique, mood, all of that sort of stuff. If you don't know You Can Always Count on Me, many of you will have the book of complete piano solos by, this is why I hate not being in my own office, Dan Coates. And that is pure Broadway. You can have so much fun with it. It's a very sort of raunchy Broadway song, and it's a very fun arrangement. And then you completely change gears and do the list Consolation. Now, great program, but just bear in mind, you wouldn't be able to do this for a performance program. You would actually have to change one of those pieces for a classical list A or something from the prescribed list. So just bear that in mind if you choose a program like this. Moving on. Okay, so this is the flyer for performance exams. Any instrument, every level. So that I told you I would include other instruments. All you have to do is to make sure you have that required piece in there. And you can do that as a face-to-face exam or as a video performance. If you're doing it as a video performance, it must be in one take. All right, moving on to the next screen. And please, I am going to take lots of questions afterwards. Now, I've gone through a few performance programs, so just keep clicking through, please, Joe. Here we've got a grade 1 program, and the first piece is a classical list A, so that's our prescribed list. And we have Vivid Venus, which is a list C. So there are 2 lists that we have to have. And we've also got Cool Daddy and Whomobile, which are both from the modern syllabus. So that would be a legal program. Can we have a look at the next one? This is a grade 8 program. We've started off with the Italian Concerto first movement. I think it's first or third you can do for grade 8. Oops, there's a typo there. You can always count on me. I changed that. I started off with The Wind Beneath My Wings, and I'll tell you why I changed it, because it's too close in mood, not in technique or anything, but in mood, to the list Consolation. So I changed it for a piece that is a completely different mood, different techniques. Consolation of Liszt, which is another classical piece, and finishing off with a couple of the Romanian folk dances. Now, that is a program for a very good pianist. No, a slouch couldn't do that. You'd have to really practice, because the Italian concertos are the Italian concerto is very challenging. All right, moving on, please, Joe. So we're still talking performance programs. Now, this is one that is very classical. We started off with King William's March again, Sonatina of Duncombe, Vivid Venus, we've talked about that, and Perilous Ascent. So I've chosen 2 list Cs there. That would be a perfectly legal program. Let's have a look at the second one. This is a grade 8 program. So in here, I've used one of the pieces from the prescribed list. Now, if you go into the website and you look at syllabus, the piano syllabus, it will have a supplementary list for piano. You click on that and you can see all your choices for each grade for all these other pieces that will take the place of a list A. Basically, they're pieces that have enough technical gravitas in them to make them worth doing from a technical point of view. And we've got You Can Always Count on Me. Ignore the Wind, that should not be there. Ragtime, from the ragtime category, funnily enough. That is a bit of a tour de force and a very difficult piece for grade 8, almost bordering on A-dip. And On a Clear Day, which is, I think that's an Oscar Peterson arrangement from Jazz and Pop. So once again, a lot of broad categories there. All right, let's go on to the next screen. Now, we've talked a bit about the compulsory list A, but I'm just going to go over it because this is one of the most misunderstood things and often requires a bit of, well, we often have to give people lesser marks than they deserve. We require a compulsory piece for every performance exam, whether it's Go, video, or face-to-face. It can be one of the most misunderstood requirements, and it's often overlooked. It's really frustrating when you get a wonderful student in playing a wonderful program and you want to give them somewhere in the high 90s and you have to give them half marks for one of their pieces. It's just devastating for examiners. We don't want to do that, but if you don't read the syllabus, you don't give us much choice. Now, there's plenty of choice within the list, and if you look at your list A in the syllabus, there is quite long. There's plenty of stuff to do. There's plenty of different stuff to do, and I've tried to show you a few choices that aren't just the tearing up and down scales type studies. It's to give preserve the gravitas of the exam. That means it's to make sure that we're not just letting kids choose 4 Mickey Mouse easy pieces and call it a day, call it an exam. We want the kids to still be achieving in an academic sense as well. So we're actually forcing your hand a little bit as teachers to make sure your students are truly up to whatever level they're sitting. There is nothing worse than choosing 4 very easy pieces for, say, grade 4, and then the child passes and goes on to grade 5. They haven't got the techniques, they haven't got the tools they need to actually do grade 5. So they try grade 5 and they're starting from the back foot. So what we're trying to do is to make sure that when students pass an ANZCA exam, they're actually ready to go on. Can we move on to the next screen, please, Joe? Compulsory list A. Check the syllabus, then check again. And if you're not sure, check a 3rd time and a 4th time. I always check when I'm entering students in for exams. I go through another check. And when I'm writing out the pieces on the exam slip to send into the exam, I check again. I've made mistakes. I'll put my hand up and confess to that right now. We can all do that. It's not great, but at least if you give yourself time to fix it up, the child's not going in there with an awful disaster on their hands. Now for piano, list A from the classical syllabus or any piece from the alternate modern list. I think I've made that clear, but of course, any questions I'm happy to answer afterwards. Singing can be a classical list A or a song from a musical. This is from a modern list, or a folk song from the modern list. So you've got a couple of choices there. With guitar, a list A must be chosen from the classical, contemporary, or modern syllabus. So you've got a few choices there. And drum kit, strings, mandolin, and ronde-bass. A list A must be chosen from the syllabus. All other instruments, because we don't have as many options for, say, trombone or French horn, you can check the syllabus and you can probably do an own choice piece if you can prove the standard is technical enough. All right, moving on to the next screen. It's all about balance. This is another aspect I want to cover in terms of programming, because it's often something that really affects the overall impression. And of course, that affects the mark. Now, I'll tell a little story. This happened so long ago that I don't think anyone's going to be offended by it. But I had a kid come in and play 2 different versions of Cruella de Vil for grade 2. Now, I was pretty unhappy about that. I couldn't actually mark her down because she'd chosen them off 2 different lists. So there's one in jazz and one in blues, I think, from memory, or pop and rock. I can't remember exactly. They're reasonably different arrangements. But in grade 2, there's not a lot you can do to change things up. You know, they were similar enough to be dead boring. Now, whilst the teacher certainly did what was in the letter of the law, she didn't really follow the spirit of the law. And I really question whether the teacher was challenging that student and making them do a program that would really benefit them long term. Can we just go click through those next points, please, Joe? So try and include as much contrast as possible, whatever program, whether it's for preliminary kid or grade 8. Don't choose 4 slow pieces. Don't choose 4 pieces in A major. Don't choose 4 pieces that all have the same techniques. Have a mix of fast and slow pieces. Make sure you have a variety of keys, and this is quite important in the early grades because you don't want them playing 4 pieces in C major. What are they going to learn? You want them to do things in different keys that challenge them and teach them that there's more than one position on the piano. And that's another thing. In the very early grades, don't have them playing everything in C position or G position. Make sure you're moving them around so they get used to it. Because if we don't get them used to that in the early grades, they're probably not ready to sit an exam, for starters. And they're going to be disadvantaged when they go to different grades and they have to start moving their hands around. They'll be like, what is this? What are you doing to me? So get them used to it early. In early grades, make sure there are different time signatures. Don't make everything in 3/4 or 2/4 or 4/4. Have a look at that and see if you can chuck one in that's 6/8 or 3/4. You don't have to make every piece different, but just make sure there is contrast there. in advanced grades, look at the opportunities to explore different techniques. Now, I said before, I changed The Wind Beneath My Wings to another piece because it was too similar to Consolation. And that's because you have this flowing left hand and a melody in the right hand. In the Liszt Consolation, written 150 years earlier, you have a flowing left hand and a melody in the right hand. To me, that's the same technique. Why would I do two pieces with a grade 8 student that are the same technique? I'm not going to do that because that's not helping them. Explore different harmonic languages. So especially as you go up the grades, and even in the early grades, some of the Sonny Chua pieces are great for this. They're just like quite out there, exploring different scales, different harmonic languages. Bartok's a great one. Schoenberg later on. Messiaen, if you can talk your student into doing one of those pieces, it can be really good for them. Khachaturian is one that I like to introduce quite early because he wrote a lot of pieces for young students. And he uses a really non-Western harmonic language, which is very attractive and very interesting for the kids. So that's the other thing. Non-Western music can capture the imagination. Not always hard, not always easy to source, but for example, there's a wonderful Indonesian composer who's written a lot of music, and I didn't ask my Indonesian friends for his name, but I will do that, and I'll make sure that's available on the website for you to have a look at. Some great stuff there. So just think about the balance of your program, because that's going to be advantageous for your student. And another thing, please try and avoid doing the same pieces for every single student. I can't tell you how hard it is on the examiner if you have, say, 10 grade 3s and they all come in and play Big Chief Rocking Horse. You get Big Chief Rocking Horse out very, very quickly, and it really interferes with your ability to see the differences in the students. The other thing is, if you've misread something or not been aware of something and made a mistake, all your students are going to come in playing that same mistake, that same uncorrected note or wrong pedal or wrong dynamics, whatever it is. They'll all have the same error because they've all learned it together and you've really, practiced it in really well. So for your own sake and for the examiner's sake, it really is a good idea to mix it up. Now, I understand a lot of people run group classes. We have that in our school for as an option for some of the younger kids. And of course, it's not practical to have everyone doing different pieces. But where you can, really try and mix it up. It's good for the students to have their own piece. I try not to have more than one student playing a piece at any one time, because I like them to think that that's their piece. Oh, I'm playing my song. You can play my song next year when you get there. It's really good for them. It also makes scheduling recitals a lot easier if you don't have 50,000 kids playing Pure Elise. Can we move on to the next page, please, Joe? Oh, yes, there we go. Includes some Australian repertoire. Now, for Australian repertoire, if you're in Malaysia, include some Malaysian repertoire. If you're in Indonesia, include some Indonesian repertoire. So, support your local artists is what I'm really saying there. Let's move on, please, Joe. Okay, now it is our duty as teachers to educate. I suppose all of you are sitting there going, duh, of course it is. But what I'm getting at there is, as teachers, we are in the enviable position of forming their opinions. It's true. If we tell them what they like, they're going to like it. They like what we tell them to like. And when you think about that, it's so obvious. I used to work as a very young accompanist. I worked for a very old bass baritone singer who'd been pretty big name in the 40s and 50s. He was a lovely man and still a pretty good singer. And he used to say, May, do you know why people clap really hard for certain songs? And I was like, no. And he said, they're congratulating themselves because they know that song. And I used to think a lot about that. And it's actually really true. I've done recitals where I've killed myself with my little tiny hands playing Rachmaninoff and Liszt and so forth. And I'll take a request for an encore, and it will invariably be Clair de Lune or Fiorelise. And I'm like, really? I practiced all that time to do all this, tearing up and down the piano, and you want a grade 5 piece? I don't even have to practice. How fair is that? But it's true. People like those pieces because they know them. So we've got to not pander to students. You can always get them to play something they want. Give them a choice to play something that they enjoy playing. But just always remember that they will eventually like pieces because they know them, they're familiar. Give them the chance to decide between pieces. That's very important. So don't say, you're playing this piece, or don't say it all the time. Say, okay, I'm going to play you 3 pieces. See which one you like the best. So you're giving them a choice between 3 pieces you think will work for them and have whatever technique you want to demonstrate there. But you're not giving them the choice between, a Tay song, as I said, and Bach, because they're going to choose the Tay song 9 times out of 10. And the other thing is there are some dreadful arrangements of popular songs on the internet. Please don't do them for exams. And I'm talking about the ones that are about grade 2 level. They are usually 10 pages long, and they usually have block chords with no proper chord shifting at all, no chord leading, voice leading in them. It's just going triad, 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 all the way through with root position triads and single notes in the right hand. They are dreadful. Don't do them because apart from anything else, they don't show your student off, and they tend to get very poorly marked because there's no room for expression, there's no room for technique. So please be aware of this and don't use them for exams. They can play them for fun anytime. That's great. Can we move to the next screen, please, Joe? Just keep clicking through till we get to the whole thing. And this is my next point. Help them make wise choices. I've already talked about churning out the same repertoire for every student. Every student you teach is unique. And being one-to-one teachers, we are in the unique position of being able to work to their personality. If you've got a really rambunctious, out there, extrovert child, you're going to give them some of those pieces that they can really pick up the ball and run with and show their character and their personality. But you're also going to want to give them something that challenges their expressive nature and make them be soulful as well. There's great arrangements of Taylor Swift or Adele out there, boy band and girl band stuff, the Studio Ghibli stuff. Encourage your students to play them. But if you choose to do one of those arrangements, make sure they're treating them with the same respect as they would Beethoven. It's not our place to judge whether music's good or bad. And, some of this stuff has already stood the test of time. So we treat it with respect. We look at the dynamics, we look at the chords. We don't just play it any old how. And if you do a free choice that's not on any list, that's great. They can even do their own compositions. Fantastic. But just please make sure that it's up to the standard of the grade. I've had really sad occasions where I've had kids doing their own compositions, which is great fun to hear. And they're great pieces, but they're not grade 7. They're more like grade 4. So actually be aware of that they don't get extra points for doing something they've written. They only get points for the piece they're performing. So just be aware of that. That's not the examiner being mean. The examiner might think, wow, great composition, but we're not marking them on composition ability. Okay, so moving on to the next screen. Just keep clicking through, Joe. Now, this is a little bit of advice, and I've talked about this, I think, in my previous teachers group, how to ace the comprehensive exam. Now, you've got to have a look at how many marks are given for each section. And there's actually almost as many marks for the ancillary stuff as there is for the pieces and scales. So just be aware of that. Even if you absolutely ace your pieces, you haven't passed the exam. You've got to ace everything if you're doing a comprehensive exam. So make sure you have time in your lesson for sight reading. And it doesn't need to be, here's a sight reading exercise, it's really boring. You can say, oh, you're doing grade 5, let's do a grade 1 piece. This is a really fun arrangement of Baby Elephant Walk, whatever it is. Let's learn this for next week. And oftentimes they will just do it in a week because it's easy, it's fun, it's still sight reading. All of my piano students, right up to diploma level, they're all involved in the back line of the percussion in the school orchestras. And they go in kicking and screaming, and they end up absolutely loving it because for them it's easy, but it's still sight reading. There's fun ways of doing sight reading and incorporating it into the lesson without taking up too much time. I'm finding this hard to read. Oral tests. Spend a little bit of time on them every week. Don't spend, 2 lessons on them just before the exam, because you don't want to be taking up that lesson time with oral tests. Obviously, you want to be running everything else. But if you're going to be doing, say, 2-3 minutes at the end of each lesson, oh, let's run this oral test, you'll find it much less stressful. So do it from the time you start the exam. Just do an oral test every week. Much easier way of handling it. Send them home with intervals to practice. That's another way that will save you a lot of time as a teacher. General knowledge should be engaging and fun. Yes, you can do all the dry stuff, all the Italian terms. Write the Italian terms in on week 1 as soon as they start the piece, because they see them every time they practice and they're not going to be confused about them. And you can test them every week. Every time you hear the piece, put your hand over something and say, okay, so what does allegro mean? And they'll treat it like a little game. Have plenty of time for technical work, but also remember to mix your technical work up, because I find a lot of students in the exam, they get really bamboozled if they have to play one scale before they've played another. I wish my eyes were better. Yes, have scheduled theory lessons. So I'm just talking about the theory requirements. So either schedule in theory lessons like, 2 a term, or you can have an extra theory class. You can do 5 minutes at the start of the class of theory, or you can outsource. But don't neglect it. Don't get to grade 6 and say, oh my goodness, we've got to do grade 2 theory by next exam. That's stressful. Try and keep it bubbling along in the background, a little bit like your sight reading and your oral tests. Unfortunately, I am only allowed 30-minute lessons for my students. And I have students doing high-level exams, so it's a lot to get through. So sometimes I'll have to schedule an extra lesson in to handle some of this stuff just because it's so pressured. But that's just a few little tips for how to manage those things, those parts of the comprehensive exam. Can we move on to the next screen? Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about students who struggle. And I just mentioned before that I have some of the talented students, like the top students in the school, but I also have some special needs students. Just click through, please, Joe. Now, one of the things that's really skyrocketed, and I'm sure this is not a surprise to any of you, I'm just telling you what you already know. Since COVID, there's been a huge, huge increase in anxiety and mental issues for young people since COVID. And that's been particularly bad in places where the lockdowns were extensive. Melbourne is, where I live, is the most lockdown city in the universe at this point. We had nearly a full year of lockdown over 2 years. It was ridiculous. And it actually affected students very, very much. It's still affecting them today. A lot of them have agoraphobia. A lot of them struggle to play in front of people. There's a lot of reasons why students will struggle with a face-to-face exam. And that's why we've opted to introduce the video format and the ANZCA Go format. We've done this to try and include those students because a lot of them are very good musicians. I've used the Go format, for example, for a student who had cystic fibrosis. And she's a great little kid, very brave, very clever, but she has good days and bad days. Sometimes her left side just doesn't work. She can't get her left hand to do anything much. And then other days she comes in and it's pretty much normal. So it gives us the freedom to pick the day that works for her. Okay, let's record you this day now. You're doing really well. I've used it for a year 12 boy who was actually booked in to do a performance face-to-face exam and he broke his wrist. So that was a drama. But we ended up doing a performance exam because once he recovered, he was finding it difficult to get through the whole program. His wrist was still quite sore. So we did bits and pieces of it for the exam. So there's a couple of examples. Adult students are a great example of people who would benefit from the ANZCA Go exam. I've taught adults. I love teaching adults. They often find the learning process a lot harder as adults than they would as children. So just to have one thing in their head at a time is really good. So busy kids who are doing sports captain, debate captain, school captain, everything else, and, you know, all the science subjects, Go exams are great for them too. So there's lots of reasons why students might struggle, and it's not for us to judge, it's just for us to help them through and find a solution that will work for them. Can we just skip through to the next screen? Now, that's the poster for ANZCA Go. We'll just keep going on from that because I've really talked a lot about that already. Kids who need more challenges, and we all have those kids who just completely ace everything and just can't get enough. Now, the 40-piece challenge is a good one. That's where you do 40 pieces through a whole year, and that can be varying levels. You can do a combination of video and face-to-face exams or a combination of performance and comprehensive exams. I know we're running out of time a little bit, so I just want to click through to the next screen. You can all read that. So with some of my kids, I will do different types of exams. There we have our dueling pianos. We've just released an updated duet syllabus, and instead of the old format of levels, we've gone with grades, 3 pieces for each grade, lots of free choice. There's lots of good suggestions on the syllabus, and there's literally something for everyone. So this is another good one for kids who don't have a lot of confidence with exams. They can enter with a friend. So we'll move on from that because that's going to be released soon. Thanks, Joe. Now, planning out your exam year. With these kids that need a lot more, I'm just going off our Australian exam options. So in July, which is coming up to the end of term 2, you can do a face-to-face comprehensive classical program. You've been working for 6 months on that. The September exam can be a compulsory list A mix of modern and classical. That's your performance exam. November could be a duet exam. So they're having a bit of fun. Any point in the year, they can submit one piece, one video to take part in the ANZCA Championship. So that's our new ANZCA competition. Can we just click through to the next screen? So this is another option. In July, you could do a classical program that would be essentially your performance program. September, you could do a duet exam. November, which is later in the year, you could do your comprehensive face-to-face. So you've had more time to do all the extras. And then again, at any point in the year, you can do your ANZCA Championship. Just keep going through, please, Joe. Here's another option, and this is for a child who might be struggling a little bit. April, which is kind of the end of term 1, they record their compulsory list A. This is ANZCA Go, and throughout the year, they gradually record more pieces. Now, they don't have to be recorded in that order. They can be recorded in any order. I just hasten to add that. At any point in the year, they can upload their favourite recording to an ANZCA Championship. At the end of the year, they could do a video duet exam. Again, not very stressful. Can we go to the next screen, please, Joe? So what is our goal? I've got two pictures here. I'm going to state for the record that I pinched this idea from Alyssa Milne. I thought these are very good images. We've got the escalator, which is straight from preparatory or intro, if you like, up to grade 8. Pretty boring. Gets you there, but you haven't really had a whole lot of fun on the way. You've been very focused. Or you could take that lovely winding path. Where's that going to go? We don't know. Who cares? It's beautiful all the way. Your ultimate role as a teacher is to make yourself redundant. And that, I can't stress that enough, because I've had students come to me at grade 8 and their teacher has written every letter name of every note and a finger on each note. That is not good. We're not teaching them anything. We're not teaching them to be independent. So whatever you do, give the students the knowledge. Try and get them to understand it rather than just, I'll learn this because I told you so. And then even if they leave you after grade 3, they can still do things themselves. Encourage musicianship in all its forms. Show your student a pathway of discovery. And that's really my big message. Can we just go to the next screen? I think we might be just about at the end, just about in time. Keep flicking. There we go. That's the teacher and the student. And really try and think of that when you're teaching. Teaching can get a little bit hard on us. We work very hard and it's one student in, one student out all through the day. Just remember that for each student, you're taking them on this wonderful journey. And as I said at the beginning, you've got this golden opportunity to teach them what they like. So that's it for the slideshow, and I'm happy to take questions. I was hoping that wouldn't take quite so long. That was probably enough for 2 meetings, but anyway. Has anyone got any comments or questions? I'm happy to hang around for a little while and take questions. I'm hearing crickets chirping here. And I can only see myself. Can we go back to a multi-view perhaps, Jo?
Yeah. So if anyone has any questions, just pop your hand up or unmute yourself and we can ask those questions that you've got.
So Cynthia, you had a question about the championship I saw just came up there. So the championship is an ANZCA competition. There will be plenty of information released very soon on that. We're pretty much ready to launch now, but it will run for each level. And we're going to be very careful about students. Say a grade 8 student won't be able to enter in grade 1. That's not going to happen. So your grade 1 student will only be up against other grade 1 students. And they just upload their best shot. And they go into the mix for the competition. It will be judged at the same time. So we don't want to be judging it through the year because that's not fair on the kids either. We're going to wait till we've got everybody's recording in by the closing date. Then we will judge. The results will be given early next year. Anyone else got any questions? I must have explained things really well, much better than I thought I was.
Hi, May. How are
Hi.
you? Imelda.
Can I see a multi-view? Is that on my screen?
Can you hear me? There's frozen a little bit. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Okay, I'm just a little bit confused over the compulsory piece. Just now there's a slide on say something about like list A or a list from a modern piece. So is it meaning that you have to choose the compulsory piece from the list A or from a modern piece, a list from the modern piece?
Okay, so what that means is that you can choose a classical list A from the syllabus.
Yeah.
And that's a valid or a legal choice. And if you go into the online syllabus, you'll see that there is another list there. I can't remember what it's called, Tony. Perhaps you can help me out here because I can't get into that screen at the moment. I'm really managing on very bad technology here today.
It's called the supplementary list.
Supplementary list.
Right.
Okay, so that's all modern choices. They're all from the modern books, and they are all legal list A's. And the obligation is actually on the teacher to do that. The student's got no power to do that. You know, it's absolutely devastating if they've worked all year on something and they can't actually end up playing it.
Just another reason for the hold up with the syllabus is that the duet syllabus is now going to be incorporated into the main syllabus. So, and it's going to be rearranged for every grade. So it used to be just 5 or 6 levels, but now there's going to be preliminary is the first level, May? Yeah.
Yes.
Preliminary, grade 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to grade 8. So for your students now, you've got the opportunity to, you know, encourage them into doing a duet exam along with their piano exam, because the grades will correspond with the levels for the piano exams.
And very excitingly, you can actually do diploma level. So you could do performance diploma as well.
Yes, so it is a major overhaul for the duet syllabus. It's been given a lot more, I don't know, respect, priority.
And it's a way too big a topic to bring up today because we're really out of time. But just stay tuned, teachers. There is very exciting news for you in the teaching diploma syllabus. Very exciting. You know, it's going to be great. And I'm really, really encourage you, if you haven't got a formal qualification to teach, this is fun, it's doable, it's achievable, and it's a really, really great qualification. Well, there's 3 of them now. So get excited with that because that's coming out very soon as well.
Cool.
Okay, well, I think we've reached the end of our meeting. Thank you so very much, May, for all of that information. I'm sure that we'll all want to have another look at the recording once it's up on Facebook and fill out more notes and share what we've learnt with our students. Thank you very, very much. And thank you all to, you know, for your attendance here today. If you are on our Facebook page, you know, be sure to share how wonderful it is to be, you know, part of this community and encourage other teachers to be involved. Next month, we'll have Maureen Grieve, who is going to work through some theory in the younger grades from grade 1 to grade 4. So she'll be our guest next month working on theory, and then following that, she'll also be addressing the higher grades in theory. So thanks again. Any questions? And email that through and we'll make sure May gets them. All the best. Have a great rest of the term. Happy Easter.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. And just have fun with the syllabus, especially for pianists. There is so much great music out there. It's fun to explore.
Yeah.
Cheerio, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
May.
Bye.
Thank you.